Well, welcome back to Rough Restos for yet another episode on the L322. So, as you guys know, I've now had this, well, since basically January. Done a bit of work to it. So far, it's served me pretty damn well, to be honest. We had the first few issues with the airbags, and I just sort of rear caliper and such, but since then, it's been a good machine. Done quite a few miles in it, and it's not let me down once. I know there is a few issues with it, but this episode is probably one of the more exciting ones, because we're going to take this 195,000 mile Range Rover, I'm going to push more power out of it. Probably my stupidest idea yet. But, hey, shy kids don't get any prizes, do they? So, let's get some more power out of this thing. So, as some as you, if you know, who've driven these before, 4.4 TDV8, about 310 horsepower standard, 700 newton meters of torque, ZF 8-speed automatic gearbox, and honestly, it really does go. This thing has got an absolute bucket load of torque, and it drives beautiful. It's a brick, it weighs 2.7 tons, but it doesn't have to go when you put your foot down. Now, the power is enough. The fuel economy is pretty crap, to be honest. I get about 30 on a good run, probably vary between 20 to 25 around the countryside here. So, it could be better, but not complaining, because you can't buy a Range Rover and complain about fuel. That's just not how it works. But it would be nice to get a bit better fuel economy, and I would never say no to a bit more power. So how do we get power on this thing? Well, it needs a remap. What else does it need? Well, just a remap really. But what can we do? Now, 195,000 miles. Obviously, this machine has emissions units because it's like Euro 6 or whatever it is. And that's the standard, and we have to comply with all this emission stuff. So what we do is we have to suffocate the engine and make it eat its own smoke in order to satisfy the government. But that doesn't really do any benefits for MPG, power, or longevity. Now, 195,000 miles means this thing's pretty well bedded in. It's earned its stripes. But on this particular car, we have parts under here. So we have, sitting under here, we have a Decat and a DPF, and of course an EGR. Now on these things you can't really get rid of EGRs. I don't believe there's any kind of blanking kit to remove it, because it's a much more bigger complex unit on here, unlike the 3.6 and many other vehicles. But a Decat and DPF, they don't necessarily need to be there, providing they are mapped out so the car doesn't think they're there, so it doesn't go through its routines and cycles and expect certain pressure readings and such from the car. Now this will actually make it run a lot cleaner, in fact, and it'd be a lot healthier for it. But this obviously isn't technically road legal, because our cars should have these emissions bits fitted to the car in order to be, well, not roadworthy because it's completely safe. It just doesn't comply with emission standards. So, you shouldn't do this, and of course I'm just going to do it for a test purpose and put the car back to standard afterwards, but I know I want to see, a lot of viewers want to see what happens when you do it, so, and I think no one so far has documented properly this, removing a Cat DPF and getting the car remapped. So I think we're going to be the first to do it, and I'm excited to do that. So let's crack on and work out what we need to do if we were to hypothetically remove the Cat and DPF from this car. So this is what a 4.4 TDV8 sounds like if the back box had just fallen off back there. There you go, doesn't sound bad. It's still very quiet, gives you a bit more of a rumble, but that's about it. So what does it sound like if it's more free-flowing? Alright, car is up in the air, very sketchy. I'm still yet to do the rust treatment underneath here. That's, we're dealing with more important things currently. Now, I don't really like this exhaust. It just seems stupid. It's huge, considering how little amount of joins are in it. So we have got a clamp there we can hopefully undo. I hope. Up here, we've got a flange. Now, that's off of a turbo there, looks, isn't it? As well. Yeah, it's definitely turbo there. Joys. And that's off of another turbo, isn't it? Looks like. I don't know how this compound turbo setup and this works. Whether one flows through the other or one takes over the other. We've got an oil leak, which I think is coming from the oil cooler apparently, so I need to look at that. I ordered some new gaskets, but I haven't arrived. Ideally, it said online that there was a joint here, which would be excellent if it was, but I don't think there is. So I'm going to measure this pipe and see if I got a joint for it. Do that. This joint between the cat and the thingy is absolutely not in a good way. So that's going to have to come apart when it's off with a lot of persuasion. And then we've got all our sensors. So we've got all our pressure pipes, all our sensors everywhere. That's all got to come undone as well, which is another nice amount of work. And then it goes all the way to the back, it seems, with no other joins. That doesn't make sense. Surely not. Unless there's below his heat shields. Because that back box had to be cut off because there's no joins. That can't all be one piece of exhaust. That'd be stupid. I'm going to quickly do my research so I don't look as much more an idiot. And I'm going to start basically disconnecting all these pressure lines off of here, all these sensors that are in our way, and looking at getting these bolts undone. So here we have a 4.4 TDV8 exhaust system. Now, that is one piece, bar the cat and bolts. What is, unless there's anything hidden under these covers, but why would you make an exhaust is one piece like that? That's huge. Bring Land Rover. Yeah, so what we've got here is our DPF, and that's our cat. We've got pressure sensors, obviously pre-DPF, post-DPF, to say how well the DPF's working. If it's blocked, needs a regen. We've got temperature sensors all over the exhaust. There's 4 of them in total. One still on the bit of downpipe from the turbo on the driver's side. Yeah, we've got a minor bit of corrosion here to this joint, so that's going to be fun to get apart. So yeah, theoretically, if we were to gut these, we would separate these out here and bash the insides out, or cut the top open, bash it out and weld it back together again. But obviously you wouldn't do that, would you? So for educational purposes only, this is the cat. Now what you could do is you could just put it in the vise and then drill down and smash down through it for all the little bits of money to fall out and be sent off for a paycheck. And then the DPF, you could try to remove the temperature sensors. You could fail at that. I've already done that for you, so you don't have to do that part. And then you can, you know, surgically remove the insides of a DPF with a hammer and chisel that way. And then obviously you could put it back on as discreet as possible, and it would be fine, right? But obviously you can't do that because that's not compliant, so don't do that. But yeah. Okay, so if you did theoretically remove contents of your cat and DPF, obviously that obviously hasn't happened, it might sound a bit like this. But that's obviously for educational purposes only. Yep, well, the day has come. Range Rover, get some mods. So it is absolutely hammering it down outside, which is fantastic. Not as horrible. It's just, and it's meant to be nice all day long, which is great. Of course, the Range Rover starts up with restricted performance. Now this is to be expected, because obviously the pressure sensors aren't quite, they don't know what's going on. They're getting the same pressure reading because there's no restriction. But there's a really easy way of solving that. If you've got gap ID, of course, just jump in there, reset the fault code, gone, it'll work fine then. Reset it whenever it comes up, which isn't too often to be honest, and it just, yeah, it's perfect. So now I'm going to take the hour odd drive up to Tuning Lab and we'll see what's going on up there. We're just here at Tuning Lab now. Range Rover strapped on my dyno. It's going to be a pig because it's going to be rare ones which need an ECU removing to put a mat file on it, which is a bit of a pain. Apparently not all 4.4 TDV8s are the same, but this one is that kind. So yeah, it's going to make it more fun. Let's see what it does. Holy shit, that thing it's just smashed my expectations. Joel has done a fantastic job on that. And yeah, it's come back in then from our base run was more than stock anyway. It's 310 and 700 newton meters stock. With the Cat and DPF deleted there, we've got 317 at 720 newton meters, which is already extremely impressive. Mapped up now, 393 and 843 newton meters. That's keen. That's more than I was hoping for, so yeah. And it's running smooth. Fantastic. Oh, excellent. Just a quick 0 to 60 test on a bit of private road. And same again, but this one's in sport uphill. Wow, 393 brake horsepower and 843 newton meters at flywheel. That thing that smashed it. Wow. I was not expecting that, and I certainly wasn't aiming that high. But Joe, wow. That was incredible. So, that's the tuning part done as well. So, what are the benefits to get it remapped? Well, obviously one is your increased power. I guess slight bragging rights. But more, you now know the accurate power coming out of it, provided you've had it done with dyno, which is handy to know. Obviously, the increased fuel economy at cruising speeds, excellent, which I haven't, well now we're a few days on, I've hardly been able to drive the car. I couldn't really test the car on the day it happened because it has been rain, rain and rain. That day it was tuned, it did not stop raining all day long. Horrific. Which was terrible, so even the drive there and back, just the roads were flooded, busy, horrible. So, I haven't been able to properly test it yet, but obviously, improved economy. I already saw a noticeable difference from the way up there to the way back. And now the way back from that sort of direction is always heavier on fuel than the way up there. Or the way to where it was, sorry. So I did notice an improvement already, but I'm yet to actually find out the exact improvement. Hopefully I can replicate a few journeys and know exactly where it's at, but I'm expecting probably a good, I might well get a good 5 miles to gallon improvement out of what's happened and done to it, which would be quite nice at cruising. Obviously when I put my foot down, economy is going to be even worse because it's now going to be able to use more fuel because it's got more power, but am I going to save fuel or am I going to spend more? That's up to my right foot really. Of course the increased torque is nice, such a noticeable difference on the torque. Now already the 4.4 TDV8 is an excellent engine. The standard 310 horsepower it puts out and 700 newton meters is really impressive and you can feel it. It's already so torquey. But with that map now, the torque's even lower down. It's just effortless. It's excellent. It's, for those of you who have had diesels remapped, you know what I'm on about here. Now the smoothness couldn't really be improved much because it was already really smooth with a compound turbo setup, unlike a lot of diesels. But it's even smoother, it's even torqueier. So it goes. So that, completely worth doing. So you've got your improved fuel economy, your improved torque, your improved drivability. Now, of course, there's going to be a negative as well. You do risk wearing out parts. Like anything, if you put more power through something, it could wear quicker. If there's any weak points, the extra stress may find them. Now, I think this thing's proved that it's very healthy. With the power it's making at the mileage it's on, it's healthy. Obviously, I've got no history to prove what's been done to it before. It's always a risk doing a remap. I know my torque converter is a bit weak, but it seemed to hang in absolutely spot on my dyno there throughout all the runs. There was probably a good 10, 12 dyno runs in total, and it held in spot on with no issues whatsoever, so I'm not too worried about that at the moment. So, what I set out to do is find out what happens when you remove the DPF, the Decat, the EGR, and Remap TDV8. There's a few little bits of information online, but nothing quite adds up, nothing's very specific, and there's no videos on it, which is really frustrating, especially when these vehicles are starting to fall into the hands of people like myself, who like to tinker with them. So, what happens? Obviously remap, it gets remapped, fine. When you got the Cat, I believe, from what I can work out, nothing really happens on that one, so the car doesn't really know about it. When you got the DPF, it'll get upset. How upset? Well, not that upset. Providing you've got a tool to reset the code, it's not a big issue. Well, 1 minute. It's not a big issue, providing you get tuned soon. Now, with a DPF gutted, I noticed an increased fuel consumption. Probably I lost somewhere along the lines of 4 or 5 miles per gallon, it seemed to average. Now, I don't know whether that's... Well, I tried to replicate other drives, and it seemed to be down in economy. So, there's a couple of reasons for this. Potentially, the ECU is thinking, oh, it knows something's wrong, and it's trying to regen the DPF or go into some kind of fail-safe mode, where it's adding more fuel. Or potentially it's just me and I wasn't being patient enough. But it did appear to be down about a good 4 or 5 mpg, which isn't ideal. If that is the case, it could be injecting too much fuel, and that will potentially dilute the oil. So do not gut the DPF and drive it for a long period of time without getting it mapped out. So what else happens? Fault codes. Occasionally when you first start up a car, it might come straight away with a fault code or go into restricted performance. Mine was going into restricted performance sometimes, but with no fault code. I'd reset the codes anyway, it would clear it and it would work straight away. If not, driving occasionally, maybe every 20 miles, it would go into restricted performance. And then reset the code, you can do it as you're driving, like pull over, get engine running, reset it, on it goes, absolutely fine. So you have to expect that. If you haven't got a code reader that will be able to reset that, then you're going to have to live with that, which obviously isn't ideal. So that does that. But if you've got gap ID or anything like that, it's not really an issue. But obviously you need to get it mapped out. EGR. EGR on a 4.4 TDV8 can't really be blanked out. Because it's part of a much bigger unit, unlike the 3.6 and a lot of other cars, there isn't any blanking plates available for it. It's not worth diving into it to blank it, because remapping it out is enough to keep it closed and is reliable in these cars. The EGR standard serves multiple purposes on that car, so just leave it alone. You don't need to touch it. That's fine, leave it as is. What else we got then? So that's sort of covered up that. Gearbox. I've had a lot of people go, oh no, your gearbox is going to explode. Well, yes. So what Wikipedia says is that the ZF8HP70 can handle 700 Newton meters of torque. Well, yes, I'm not sure where that statistics come from, whether it comes from ZF themselves. Now, as factory, that car comes out of factory with 700 Newton meters of torque. So in which case, Land Rover sent it out with the gearbox on its edge from day one. But they very rarely go wrong. Well, they never really appear to go wrong on the 8 HP. They seem to be the most reliable and strongest box in an L322. But yet, it's coupled to the most torquey engine in the L322. So, I'll let you guys make up your mind on that one. Mine was 195,000 miles, and from what I can work out, torque converter, gearbox, completely original. Now, my car had never towed before, so that might also be part of it, but if it can do 195,000 miles on its limit, I think the gearbox is stronger than we're giving it credit for. If not, there is sort of, I know we do a ZF 8 HP 90, which can handle 900 Newton meters. Whether we can swap one of them or change internal components over, not sure, but I don't think it's really needed. So gearbox, I think that's a myth, really. It's going to be fine, really. If your gearbox is already knackered and you remap it, expect it to break. If your gearbox is absolutely sound, you should be fine. If you hammer it everywhere from cold, like anything, you might break it, but that's your problem. So just don't be a dickhead, and you should be fine. What else we got then? So that covers the gearbox, removing the EGR, DPF, Decat, and so on, all fine. A few fault codes, yep. Well, one fault code for DPF, not a big issue. Any other issues with it? Not really, other than the controversy. So this so far has been my most controversial mod to an L322 going. I've upset a few people. Actually, there's been a couple quite abusive people on it, actually. I don't know how, I've seemed to hit a nerve. But I don't see how you can be an eco-warrior and own a Range Rover. They don't go hand in hand. So, I'm sorry if this has upset you. If it's any consolation, I live in the middle of nowhere. So, I risk maybe upsetting the odd sheep, maybe a cow. You know, puppy. What's on? But that's about it, really. So, I'm not going to be outside of a stop oil protest thing of black smoke. I actually had a couple of people turn up and go, oh, it's going to be cuffing black smoke. That was after I've done it, with pictures of what I've done. I surely know what it's doing because I've just done it. So a few people tried to tell me what would happen after I've done it, to which there is no black smoke, literally. You'll see a tiny bit of black smoke on the first start up when the Cat and DPF have been gutted. Well, one, it was cold. One minute, the dog just run off my gaskets and my order list. Oh, Mia! I tried to help myself out with a little list. That's got a brand new gasket in it. Yeah, let's do that. Yes, that's Daddy's. Sorry, where was I? Yeah, so that was kind of not from cold, but it wasn't fully warmed up at that point. It's first start. Cat and DPF gone. So what's going to happen? 195,000 miles of soot. It's going to blow up that tailpipe. So it wasn't smoke as such. It was mostly just soot coming out. Old soot. So if your L322 is smoking like a train after it's been mapped, it's not been mapped well. Because Joel has smashed it and literally on the dyno, there was no smoke. It was spot on. So it's not some big, dirty, polluting, coal rolling machine. It's still a very refined L322. Now, I've been asked a few questions on, okay, well, is it noisy? Is it drony? Overall, it's not that noisy. In the video, it sounds, in my opinion, sounds really good. I am planning on putting the back box back on to try it soon. There is a drone about 1,000 RPM. So lower revs, you can definitely hear a bit of drone. Obviously, it's not often you're actually at about 1,000 RPM. So it's up to you, really, whether you want to live with it or not. I'm going to try to put the back box back on and I'll post some results up in the future of what happens with that. But I've already shown you in a video what it sounds like with, well, you know what it sounds like stock because you've probably got one. You know what it sounds like now with just the back box removed, and now you know what it sounds like with the back box, the Cat and DPF removed. So I quite like it. I want to maybe quieten down the idle a smidge, make it a bit more sleepery and discreet. But other than that, I'm quite happy with it. So, and well, that about covers it really. I'm over the moon. I can't thank Joel enough at Tuning Lab. I highly recommend him. He's so knowledgeable, so helpful, just a really genuine, nice chap, to be honest. He just knows what he's on about. So it's quite a relief to go somewhere and you've actually got a tuner which knows what he's talking about and you can trust. Especially when you're, essentially dealing with an £80,000 motor. I know not these days, but they are expensive. They're not easy to fix and they're not cheap to fix. So if you're going to do it, you probably want it done right. Not some dodgy eBay map like I've done on previous cars. So, yeah. Once again, I want to apologise to Eco Warriors. Sorry, but what's the difference on doing it on a 2011 Range Rover to the millions of, well, not quite millions, but tens of thousands of people do it to a 2007 BMW? Really? No different. Or in terms of emissions and all that kind of stuff, well, the TDV8 is still my most economical car on the fleet. I'm pretty sure my 5 litre Mercedes V8 here with a aftermarket ECU is not going to be as good for the environment, or my Turbo Technics 3.9 Range Rover V8, or my 200 TDI Range Rover Classic, or the 4.4 V8 Range Rover L322, or my Mark 225 Golf. They're not good for the environment. I'm sorry, but I live in the middle of nowhere, and that kind of thing isn't my top priority, to be honest. So, yeah, I apologise. Of course, what I'm going to do is put the whole system back standard. This was for test purposes only, because obviously you shouldn't be driving around with no DPF cat or anything, because the government really like us to have those emissions things on. They're not at all put on just to meet the Euro standards set out by the government, and they don't at all hinder, restrict and reduce longevity of the engine and lightning parts. Not at all. That's a myth. They're good for the car. You should definitely keep them on, and yeah. So I'm going to quick wrap on now because I've been speaking forever. Sorry I've been boring you. I really hope I've answered some of the questions that have been kicking around on the internet now, because I'm sure this is the first video to go out with an L322 4.4 TDV8 actually being tuned. I'm sorry the format isn't maybe more consistent or a bit cleaner. A lot of it is done quite quickly and not very well planned out, so which is a bit of a shame, but I'm hoping I've squeezed everything in there you need to know. Well, thank you for watching. I really appreciate the support. The support on the L322 content this year and the Capri and whatnot has really been incredible. The channel's been growing so much and I really appreciate that. So, dog is on one. Absolutely on one. Wish I had that much energy. Yeah, I appreciate the views, the likes, the comments, all the support I get on Facebook, on YouTube and that. You're all so good. So, yeah, I thank you for that. If you don't like the content or what's in there, then, well, probably best just not watching it really, because you won't get on too well. Seriously, dog, are you going to let me record a video or what? But yeah, that's basically a wrap on that one. I enjoyed filming that one thoroughly. There's going to be some more L322 content soon, but obviously previously on the channel there is so much content. Well, from what some of you probably don't know, is that Range Rover I just had tuned up was, when I bought it back in December, the cheapest 4.4 TDV8 L322 for sale that was running, driving, roadworthy and ahead of MOT. I got that for an absolute bargain. So that was right up my streak and added to the gamble of getting it tuned. Hence why I've waited quite a while before I started messing around with it. Just because I wanted to get to know the car inside out before we started pushing it and trying to break it. So yeah, and that so far has worked out. Touch. Well, I'd say wood. There's no wood in. There's a bit. Mostly body filler. So yeah, if you happen to enjoy the content, then why not drop me a comment? Tell me what you think. Give the video a like. The likes really help, and the comments with the YouTube algorithm, and they help get the video spread around, and that makes it more popular, and then more people find the channel, and it's great. So I really appreciate that. Obviously, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. There'll be plenty more content coming out. Obviously, there's plenty more content on all the other projects. There's like 100 odd videos on my channel, so there's plenty to go back on. And yeah, all I'm really saying is, with any luck, I'll see you guys again next time. Thank you for watching. I've been Jordan. Cheers.